When I started to produce, I often had tracks that were a little bit too long, too dirty, and ended up becoming a bit boring because I didn't know how to solve them. But today, I'm going to teach you the 7 tips that I wish I knew when I started to produce, and how you can solve them in your own tracks so you can start making better tracks right now. Let's go down to Ableton and let's get started with tip number 1. Let's go. So we're here in Ableton, and the tip number 1 for today is that you need a direction for the arrangement of your song. When I started to produce, my tracks were often too long, and I didn't know why, and that happened because I didn't have a direction for it. My breaks were too long, my drops were too long, which made the song repetitive and essentially boring, and I'm sure that you don't want to make your songs boring, right? So a way to solve this is by using reference tracks, and over here in Ableton, you can see that I have 2 reference tracks. I have Norrin Pure's tracks, Us, and I have Ben Bomer's tracks, Breathing, over here. And if we lay down the arrangement of these tracks, we have something like this. It's pretty clear to us that the drop 1 is 32 bars for both tracks, the break is 24 or 32 bars, and the drop 2 is 24 or 32 bars for both tracks. And I don't think that this is a coincidence. But how can you use this? Well, essentially with this strategy, you can pick reference tracks and create arrangement maps, and this way you can understand how long your sections need to be in your songs. And by doing this, you understand how long your sections need to be to avoid being too long. And not only this, but this will help your composition, because if you have 32 bars to compose your drop 1, it's going to be different than if you had 64 bars to compose your drop 1. And that will make your composition more to the point and less repetitive, which is what we want to achieve at all the times. But now let's go to point number 2, which is you need to create movement along the arrangement of your track. Now, it doesn't really matter if you have the perfect arrangement, but it doesn't really move or grow, because it would sound a bit boring if you had the same 8-bar loop throughout the whole drop, right? And again, a way to get out of this is using a reference track. Listen to Norrin Pure's track, listen to the first 8-bar. Second 8-bar. She adds vocals and hi-hats. Third 8-bar. More hi-hats and more melodics. And the last and fourth 8-bar. She adds more percussions, more vocals, and she does some changes to the piano as well. Well, basically, this is creating an outline to you to what you can do in your track to create movement in it. Not only this, but it's also showing which elements you should put in the song to create more movement. And how this can help you, essentially, if you're lost, if you don't know where to go, or if you're stuck in an 8-bar loop, listen to a reference track, pick it, and break it down like this, so this way you'll be able to understand how often you need to add elements and which elements do you need to add and where. Something that you can do is create an arrangement like this where you can clearly see the song starting the drop, adding more hats, adding more melodies and more hats, and developing even further. And that is really good because that's going to help you move faster in your track. And another thing that's going to really help you move faster in your track, and this is tip number 3, is don't spend too much time looking for the perfect sounds, because that's impossible. Have you ever gone through this when trying to find the perfect clap sample? And after a lot of time, you found nothing. Well, oftentimes we spend hours and hours trying to find the perfect sample, and we end up finding nothing, which makes us bored with the song that we were making, which makes us want to trash the song that we were making, and that doesn't really help us at all because we're not finishing any new tracks with this. A way to prevent this from happening is limiting your options and limiting the sounds that you're going through when trying to find the perfect sound. To solve this, one thing that you can do is, instead of going through multiple samples, you go through only one sample pack, and you can go, for example, through Production Music Live sample packs, and you can find them over here. But essentially, if you choose only one, this is going to limit the amount of sounds that you're going to have to go through. And this is going to make you choose sounds faster, which will make you move through the idea phase a lot faster. And that's the crucial phase, because if you don't move fast over there, it can end up getting boring to you. Another thing that you can do is just try to find a placeholder sound. So instead of trying to find the perfect sample right away, you're trying to find a sound that works for that idea, but it's not the perfect sound. And then afterwards, you change it. For example, listen to this bass over here. This was the first bass that I had for this song, and I didn't really like the way it sounded, but I liked the idea that it generated. After I loved the idea, that's when I did the sound design of it. But I only did the sound design because I liked the idea. And now it sounds a lot better, but I only tweaked the sound design because I liked the idea after all. But how will this help you? Again, this will help you make you go through the idea phase a lot faster. And if you go through that faster, get rid of the problem of not liking the song anymore. Now it's just a matter of trying to find the perfect sound after you like the idea and now that you're going through it. However, when you go fast through a song, this is going to cause a lot of mixing problems in your song because you're not really thinking about the sounds, you're just thinking about going through the idea. And this will take us to tip number 4, which is you have to clean up your mix from time to time. Listen to how this song was before I did any kind of tweaking in the sound design of it and only got the idea over there. And this is how it sounds after I did the whole partial mixing in it. When you start a new idea, think about getting as much as you can, as fast as you can, again, to make sure that the idea works. After you know that the idea works, then you go and do a little bit of a partial mixing through it. But why are you doing this? Well, essentially, you're doing a partial mixing, 1, to make sure that the sound is going to be better and that the progress of the song is going to be more enjoyable to you. And 2, and most importantly, you're going to open up space in your mix. And by doing this, you'll be able to add a lot more elements because essentially there will be more space in the mix. Again, listen to this how it was before. Really dirty and crowded in the low mids, but after I cleaned this, listen to how it sounds, and it may be possible to add a guitar over there because I cleaned the low end. Not only it sounds better, but it also sounds cleaner and better to listen to. But in this stage, make sure to only do a few adjustments. EQ and volume, and that's it. Which takes us to point number 5, which is you're going to have to low cut almost everything in your song. A nice way to clean up a little bit of space in your mix is by low cutting almost every element in your song besides your kick and your bass, and some low end percussions as well. But listen how crowded this song sounds when I don't low cut the piano and the guitar. And listen how it sounds afterwards. The low mids especially, they sound a lot better, a lot less crowded. And I only did this with an EQ over here. Leo, but which EQ should I use? You can use any EQ that you want. Do a 12 dB cut in any EQ and go adjusting it until the point where you feel that it cleans the low end, but at the same time it doesn't take a lot of the sound from it as well. How will this help you? Well, again, by doing this, you're going to open up a lot of space in your mix, and that will allow you to add a lot more elements. And not only this, but the song will sound a lot better to you as well. Now, if you want to add more effects, you can as well. But let's go to tip number 6, which is you have to process everything with a purpose. But Leo, can I add distortion, compression, and anything else? You can add as many plugins as you want. You can do as many things as you want as long as you understand why you're doing it. And you're not just doing it because you saw someone doing on YouTube. I recently had a student on my one-on-ones, and for every element that he had this rack over here, essentially with a lot of plugins. And I asked him why he was doing it, and he said that he was just following what he saw on YouTube, but he didn't quite understand why he needed all these plugins. The problem with that is that by adding a rack with a lot of plugins that you don't really need, you're more prone to use these elements just because they're already there available to you. Second, if you don't really need them, they may be causing you more problems than good to you. Why would you buy a plane if you need just a car, right? Therefore, that's why I recommend using only EQ and volume in your pre-mixing because they're the simplest one and normally you can't go wrong with them. How will this help you though? Again, by avoiding plugins that are necessary, you're gonna avoid unnecessary issues in the end as well. which may cause you some problems in your mixing or may cause some problems in your mastering as well. And that takes us to the last point, which is another mixing step, which is you need to sidechain almost everything in your song as well. One of the most important parts of this pre-mixing, along with the EQing, is sidechaining. And you need to learn how to do the sidechaining properly, whether you're doing with a volume shaper or you're doing with a compressor. But why do you need to learn sidechaining? Well, sidechaining will avoid a lot of issues, especially in the low end with your kick and your bass. But it also will enhance a lot of the groove and the vibe of the song, which is always nice to do. There are a couple of things, however, that I often see producers overlook. First, you have to make sure that your sidechain of your low elements like basses and toms are a lot more intense than the sidechain of mid elements. So for example, if you look at my sub over here, I'm sidechaining my sub exactly to my kick at 100%, which means whenever the sub is playing, there's no kick playing. Whenever the kick's playing, there's no sub playing. At the same time, I'm sidechaining the piano of the song with the same vibe, but with a lower intensity. I do sidechaining not only on the pianos and melodic elements, but also on percussive elements like shakers and hi-hats as well, because this way I make sure that the whole track is grooving at the same pace, at the same sidechain. But how will this help you? So essentially with sidechaining, you will avoid a lot of low-end issues that it can create with bass and kick. And not only this, but when you do the sidechain properly in the mids and also in the percussions, you'll make the whole song groove as one element together, which will make the vibe of the song and the unity of the song sound a lot better and a lot more cohesive together. And that's essentially it. I hope you liked the video, and I hope to see you soon in the next Abstrakt video next week. Ciao.